Couple good tips I want you to listen to, very, very simple things. I'm going to give you a good example of this, is make sure your drums always, no matter what you're doing, make sure your drums match your melody. Okay, this is where a lot of producers go wrong. They either start with a fresh melody and they just throw some drums underneath it and think I'm done, or they start with some great drums and they throw a melody on it. And what happens? The two don't work. I'll give you a great example. Play this track right here. What do you hear in that track? What you hear is a very live sounding sound. You have live bass, you have live drums, you have live horns, or at least they sound like they're live. And when I say something is live, I'm talking about an actual instrument you can play, kind of what we see right here behind me. Okay? This is the #1 mistake producers make. If you have a live sounding instrumentation, meaning you're using strings, you're using organs, you're using live sounding piano, use live sounding drums. Okay? And vice versa. If you're using synthetic sounds in your music, meaning synthesizers or Triton keyboards or any of those things that are along those lines, if it sounds like it's not a real instrument, then don't use real drums with it. The two won't sound right to your ear. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong, there's room to kind of mess with the two of these and to find a middle ground and a common ground. There is room, but that as a general rule to stick to. If your melody or your music in your track sounds live, match it with live sounding drums. If you're working with, and vice versa, if you come up with synthetic drums, then add a synthetic sound to your drums. Okay? Keep that in mind. Just two basic rules to always work with. That's usually where guys clash. And that's why you always want the two to work together. A song is made up of two parts. It's made up of the lyrics and it's made up of the music. But the music is made up of two parts, the melody and the drum. And those two have to work harmoniously together. One last thing I want to kind of jump into to understand is distinctions in producer sounding drums. Now we always talk about our favorite producers. I love this guy. Well, I like this guy. This guy's my favorite. Timbaland's my favorite. Primo's my favorite. Neptunes are my favorite. Rah, 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 rah. Why did these guys become our favorites? Why? These guys become our favorites because why? Because they have learned how to make their own distinct drum sounds. Okay? And they've understood that the drums have to go with the melody. Good example. You take a guy like Little John, who uses all synthesizer sounds. He uses a lot of, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So how does his drums match? He has that low-end bass bottom sound to it, the TR-808. He uses that. It makes sense. Now you take a guy like Timbaland. If you listen to Timbaland's kicks, his kicks are almost a combination of a synthetic kick and a real kick. In fact, his kicks are also very, very similar to like a good example. The difference between a kick drum off a drum set versus the kick drum at a marching band, they're both live actual instruments, but a kick drum off a drum set versus a kick drum at a marching band, one is going to hit much harder than the other. And Timbaland tends to use a lot of those type of kick drums. And so what his melodies like? His melodies are very live-ish kind of sound. He has some kind of in-between. Neptunes, they tend to use stuff that's a little more synthetic. So their drums tend to they use stuff that tends to be a little more live. That's why their drums sound a little more live. Again, you can go in to some of your favorite producers and take a listen to their tracks and go, what are they doing in the melody? The melody should reflect the drums. So this is some basic understandings, things to work with as you make your drums, how to tweak them, etc., etc.